Let's just roll the intro and fake it from here. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Shiftless. And yes, the cans are coming off because there's so much delay. I can't hear what I'm doing. So we are going to fake it. It is once again Shiftless. I think it's episode 94. Welcoming in to Shiftless. It's Kevin. Yeah, I'm flying solo again, launching from Chateau de Spinistry instead of Casa Verde. And man, Casa Verde, it's been such a fantastic place to do shiftless episodes. Actually, Brad Mine's very first podcast, so to speak. I don't even know what we were thinking, but it's actually a Spinistry chat episode. I'm pretty sure it's terrible. But from Brad's garage, and there may have been, it was not a coffee morning. It was an evening. I'll leave it at that. We were discussing the merits of Sharknado. It was like a Sharknado watching party. That kicked off the podcasting chops for Brad and myself. There was nothing serious about that by any stretch of the imagination. But from that point on, Brad had regularly reached out to me inquiring, when are we going to do another? When are we going to do another? When are we going to do another? It evolved into Shiftless. And I say all that just to changes are coming to Shiftless. There's more on that later. Let's cover content. I promise you the pieces do tie together into some sort of a theme for this episode. But I want to definitely, Shiftless is foremost about riding bikes, simply bicycles. That's what Shiftless is. And for a lot of us, prioritizing riding time that takes a lot of work, a lot of creativity, a lot of imagination, a lot of patience from ourselves, our family, our friends. And I want to touch on that today, because those of us that this is not about enjoying riding bikes. Anybody that's listening to this podcast loves riding bikes. Anybody that's putting on this podcast, I guarantee you, loves riding bikes. And most of us defer towards the long endurance side of things. The more time in the saddle we can spend, even better. And the reality is that to be able to ride endurance rides, you've got to train for it. You have to put in the saddle time week in and week out. And I get it. Structured training is not appropriate for everyone by any stretch of the imagination. But even if you're just riding your bike 2 or 3 times a week, having fun with your friends, ultimately that's still training. It takes hours each week to be able to ride a super long ride or adventure or bike packing trip or whatever you want to call it. You have to put in, I'm calling it the work, but I think we all know it's not really work. It is play, but it takes dedication. It takes structure of some sort to make it happen. Very few of us that can just hop off the couch and go out and ride a 3-day, 250, 400-mile trip or something like that, or go out and do even 50 or 75 miles in a day if you haven't been riding regularly. And from personal experience, I can definitely tell you that those of us that love cycling, if we're in a position where we're actually not riding ourselves, that, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but the struggle is real. Seeing everyone else around you doing the things you want to do it becomes a burden to some extent. And I'm not trying to say that from, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm not going at it from that approach. Let's paint a picture. Back in, I call that Spinistry 1.0, basically from when we started 2010 to 2017, we were finding our identity, how we wanted to do things and putting the pieces together. And we were pretty close to there, but finding our way over those 6 or 7 years prior to that, it had become, my priorities weren't riding the bicycle, but I was very frustrated with that. And during the course of that time, I kept telling myself I need to get on the bike, do the bike more. And quite frankly, it was getting to the point where, at least in my mind, it was impinging on my own credibility to put on these events, to talk about it, to do things around endurance cycling where I wasn't riding the bike that way myself anymore, as much as I wanted to. It was the priority, quite frankly. It wasn't, hey, we're going to make this cycling related business go gangbusters. That wasn't, it was just, quite frankly, it was survival at that point. Just trying to cover the truck payment and the mortgage and put on a good show for people every month or two. And thankfully, we got there where we were able to make that happen. I am truly blessed. So I'm not crying about that at all. But 2017 rolled around and I planted a flag in the ground. I was going to get back on the bike. I was going to do my own rat one. I can't even remember if it was at 1,000. I think it was 1,000 then. I can't remember. It was at least 900. Pretty sure it was 1,000, but I'm not positive. Maybe that was the year we put the final 1,000. Rich Walshman can clarify that for us. He is the official Spinistry historian. And so 2017, I decided I'm going to ride my own Rat 1000. And make no mistake, a big chunk of that was warranted or not, almost an imposter syndrome sort of thing. I know that's a catchphrase these days that lots of people lean on, but I felt I needed to reinforce my own credibility around the types of events I was promoting, around the stuff I was putting together. And there's no doubt I wanted to ride my bike as far as I possibly could. And I had no idea myself what it was going to take for me to do that at that point. I was way out of shape. I really hadn't done any serious training since 2011 Dirty Kanza, between basically a heat stroke at DK that year. It was a weird year where down here in Texas, it was a very tame spring. We didn't really have our regular heat acclimation that kicked in April and May and into June. It was, for Texas, it was quite pleasant. And it was a great way to train for DK because we weren't having our hot trips, but we get up to DK that year and it was crazy hot and humid and everybody was falling out. There were people that were traditionally much stronger riders than me were camping out in orchards and groves and finding whatever tree they could in the middle of a field just to get some shade. And I was passing them by and I still bailed out at the midpoint. And that was tough, but what made that tolerable, for lack of a better word, is that I saw other people that I knew were traditionally stronger riders than myself that didn't make it as far as I did that year. I'm not saying that I had a superhuman effort or anything like that, but it showed me that I could push through a little further, and maybe with more mental fortitude, maybe I could have done the whole thing. But I'm not one of those that I don't ride my bike to suffer. And I know there's a lot of people that suffering is the fun, or that sense of accomplishment. I get that. I'm not taking that out of the situation by any stretch of the imagination, but that's not what I focus on. And for those that do, more power to you. Kudos. You definitely get my applause. But I say that just to reinforce that I don't consider it quitting to do more than you've ever done before and not reach what was maybe the ultimate goal for the day or the week or the trip or whatever else. If I've accomplished more than I've ever accomplished personally, I consider that a success. Even though I didn't get the 200 under my belt that trip, I still considered it a successful ride. But heat stroke's probably too strong of a word, but I definitely got wiped out by the heat, maybe a lower level heat stroke or something like that. And the reality was the rest of that summer, I couldn't do anything in the heat at all. I was just absolutely wiped out. It was actually a couple years after that. I still have issues, quite frankly. I've never been heat tolerant, but I was really bad after that excursion. So that to be heat intolerant and ride bikes in Texas, that doesn't work together really well. Basically, over time, that led to less riding and less options to ride, or, hey, here's a good chance to ride. Oh, but it's 102 degrees and I'm not heat acclimated. I think we've all been there. It gets really easy for just to get out of that routine, get off that horse. And before you know it, you're just not riding your bike anymore. Long way around to 2017, I decided I was going to start riding my bike again. And reached out to my friend Clarence at Mad Duck Cyclery. He's a heck of a coach. Lots of skins on the wall along those lines. And he was familiar with me, how I ride, my mindset, what interests me, what I want to be able to do for myself and show other people and things like that. And he put together a very basic fundamental training plan for me to get ready for the rat, being fat, old, out of shape, and off the bike. And I want to say we started that towards the end of January 17, maybe February. And that was the core of introducing me to writing every day. And it worked. It's that simple. Writing every day works. And Brad and I have talked about it on a regular basis. Writing every day doesn't mean you actually do write every day. Hopefully you do. Hopefully I do. Hopefully we all do. But the realities of life, things get in the way. So you plan to write every day and you put the pieces together. So every day you have an opportunity to ride your bike. And then that way, when life pops up and you're not able to ride on a Thursday, oh, that's okay. I got to go take care of this life thing. I'll ride my bike tomorrow. Perfectly fine. The reality is things come into play where life gets in the way every day for a week, a month, gosh forbid, a year or more. And what I ran into in 2017, it was Memorial Day weekend, 2017. I'm training for the rat. I am riding every day. I'm not going to do this thing fast. There's no doubt. My mind was like, I don't even know if I have the ability to ride 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row. Can I make 1,000 miles? I have no clue. So my goal wasn't to complete the full 1,000 miles per se. My goal was to find out what I could do or to get an idea if I could pull it off or not. And I was training, but I was still fat, old, and out of shape. And Memorial Day weekend of 2017, my parents were in town. Just went for a quickie ride, right, just outside the neighborhood, back roads. Had all my lights blinking, covered head to toe in neon. Yeah, I always look like a clown when I'm on the bike. Yeah, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. And probably less than 3 miles from the house, I'm going down this long, desolate back road. It's a dead end road. It's cul-de-sac road. There's 6 houses on it that are down maybe 2 miles. Larger properties, but there's zero traffic on it. And I get down towards the end of the cul-de-sac, about to turn around, and it's going to be a nice, gentle 1.5 mile climb back up towards the top of the hill. It's just part of my regular riding routine, staying out of traffic. And I hear a car at max acceleration. I don't know where it's coming from. Just the noise is everywhere. And about 2 seconds later, I see a flash out of my right side, and I'm just coasting through the cul-de-sac to turn around. I'm on the right side, far right side of the cul-de-sac, going around, and I see this white flash coming at me from the right, and got hit by this Lexus that was coming out of one of the estates. I don't want to overstate it, but essentially there were multi-acre properties. So this was probably the least estate. I didn't even know this one was back there, quite frankly. There were these big Italian cypress trees that blocked where the house was. So it was just this gravel driveway that came, not even a lane wide. And that's why I didn't know where this was coming from. All the sound was coming from behind those trees. And thank God the guy was in a Lexus. My guess is all of the automatic, even in 2017, all the automatic anti-collision, automatic braking, anti-pedestrian, killing pedestrian features, I think they kicked in. I think they did their job, because that was the first thing I noticed when I got hit and I wasn't dead. So, wow, that's a pretty good driver. Yeah, I don't know how he stopped. Yeah, there's no way his reaction time worked like that. And my assumption was it was just some kid being stupid, lives at the end of the road, playing Dukes of Hazzard, coming down his dirt driveway. Yeah, I can relate to that. When I was 17, 18 years old, I was going to be a NASCAR driver, and I did stupid shit out on the road in the 78 Chevy Malibu. I'm not excusing it, and I'm not saying that's what I should have been doing, but in my head, it's like, all right, stupid kid, I get it. We've all been there. But no, it's some 50-year-old guy comes out of his car, refuses to call 911. I'm laying on the ground, and he's blaming me. Yeah, we'll just leave it there. I got hit by a car, and it essentially ruined my knees, but it took me years to figure out how much they were ruined. Fortunately, what I'm able to do is ride a bike. I can't walk very far. I try. I can't hike, that's for damn sure. I've tried, but I can ride a bicycle. Now, I hope, I pray that maybe someday I will be able to walk and hike and do those things. And it's taken me a number of years to get to it, but one of the realizations is lots of denial in there. One of the realizations is that even though I can ride the bike, but I can't do those other things. Essentially, when I'm not riding the bike, I'm not doing anything. So even over the years, when I have put in lots of time on the bike, and lots of time is relative, I get that. If you can find 5 to 10 hours a week to ride your bike, I consider that a lot of time. If you're doing over 10 hours, it's doable, but man, that takes some dedication. And I got to the point where I was doing 10 to 12 hours a week on a pretty regular basis. Ultimately, though, that all of the movement I was getting, but it took a long time for that to register for me. And in the meantime, here's the reality of it. If you ride your bike, you're going to get hurt. You're either going to get hit by a car, you're going to get taken out by someone else, you're going to do something stupid yourself, you're going to slide out on a wet patch going over a bridge, you're going to, if you're mountain biking, you're going to take a turn too fast or jump too short, whatever else. You're going to get hurt. That's part of the equation. If you're riding your bike more than 5 hours a week every week, the odds are stacked against you that at some point along the way, you're going to run it. You're going to have a trip to the emergency room one way or another. So all that to say, I got hit by a car in Memorial Day weekend, 2017. I couldn't walk, but I could ride my bike. And I went out and attempted the Route 1000 that year. Again, not to do 1,000 miles. It was more to get a sense, is that something I could even pull off? I had no clue of my own capabilities at that point. And way too long of a story, a little bit shorter. I made it to Vernon, Texas, just over the halfway point, 570 miles or something like that. And I was done. I was satisfied. I wasn't wiped out. It wasn't, oh, I can't do this anymore. I proven to myself that, yeah, I could do 1,000 miles. I could make that happen. But at that point, that wasn't my true desire. My desire wasn't to do the 1,000 miles. My desire was to find out if I could do the 1,000 miles. And I had convinced myself I could. And I pulled the plug then. And I've definitely gotten pushback on my mindset for that, but that's okay. That's other people's mindset. My mindset was, I was satisfied with what I had done. And what I was dissatisfied with was going back to being in business for myself, cycling in the streets. It's a stupid way to make a living, I'm telling you. But it's beautiful. It's wonderful too. The last 2 days of that trip, all that was going through my head was how much I was dropping the ball on business, things that needed to be done. Nothing that was super critical, nothing that was going to make me go out of business overnight, but this stuff needs to happen for that flywheel to keep turning, for everything to keep going. And that was eating into my head more so than the of accomplishment. Because again, my focus for the sense of accomplishment wasn't the 1,000 miles. My focus, whether I had admitted it to myself at that point or not, I'm pretty sure I had. It's hard for me to go that far back in my own head, but I was just wanting to get a sense of if I could pull it off. And I convinced myself that I could pull it off if that was my true focus. And then we went into a stretch of a lot of bicycle focus, a lot of training, a lot of now it's time to get serious about this and take it to the next level. And I expanded on that riding everyday approach. My big takeaway was we got to keep this fun. And there's no more fun than riding every day, frankly. But you can have fun and structure it so it's helping you accomplish goals as well. And we all have our own goals for whatever the reasons. I'm not here to tell you what your goals should be. And God forbid anybody tries to tell me what my goals should be. That's somebody else's business but my own. But riding every day, it makes my life better. And I think it probably makes your life better as well. But to do it every day, you have to keep the fun into it. You have to find ways to make it, for lack of a better term, convenient. And that's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. We've got family, work, social life, a myriad of obligations, expected and unexpected. It's real easy for riding the bike to just keep drifting down the list. Hell, it's real easy for riding the bike to fall completely off of the list. And that's what I'm here to say. We can't let that happen. And I am completely guilty of it myself. But just prioritize riding your bike. I know I'm incomplete without it. I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, you're incomplete without it. If we're prioritizing riding our bike, is that selfish? Maybe. I can definitely speak for myself. I'm a lot better person to be around when I'm riding my bike. I'm pretty sure my wife will vouch for that as well. Pretty sure my dogs will even vouch for that. Bringing things around back to this show and that first trip out to Casa Verde, Brad and I have had these discussions quite a bit. And he, for lack of a better term, thanks me for reinforcing the riding everyday approach in his world. I'm glad that's helped him. But he's repeatedly attempted to get through my thick skull the importance of prioritizing cycling itself. Because there's been many days I've shown up to Casa Verde and we riding bikes today? No, I got this to do. I got that to do. Or I'm going to ride it later in the day, or I'm going to get on the smart bike, and things, particularly for the past several months in my world, just hasn't happened. Brad's gently, sometimes not so gently, encouraged me to move the bike riding higher up the priority list. Now, by prioritizing cycling, I don't mean to put it above everything else. Arrange everything else so that you can ride your bike as needed, as it fits into the equation. And I guess that kind of brings us to the, for lack of a better term, upcoming shiftless changes. First off, I don't know what that really means yet. I want to qualify that. This is not the end of shiftless. I will say that. But the nuts and the bolts of it are the way we've been doing this takes 6 to 10 hours of my time each week. And I'll fall on the sword and say, I'm being selfish here. Getting a chunk of that time back gives me a lot more flexibility to ride my bike. The reality is that family obligations since this past October, and family includes people and dogs are my family. Y'all know that. Those obligations were eye-opening to me in that they reduced my flexibility, for lack of a better term. One of the beautiful things about being in business for myself is I set my own schedule. I don't have to clock in and clock out. If I want to get things done at 2 o'clock in the morning to knock out something that has to be done, I can do that. So ultimately, I've had a very flexible schedule that allowed me to get back on the bike when I was able to appropriately shift my focus and priorities. And these family obligations opened my eyes to the fact that there's still stuff that's out of my control. So where I used to have this huge flexibility for, okay, an hour popped up here, I can go ride my bike real quick. That's still basically the way I ride my bike, quite frankly. I don't, from day to day, I don't know when I'm going to ride. I just know I'm going to ride on Tuesday. I don't set appointments to ride my bike. I structure my day so that there are openings throughout it, which had worked well till we started running into these other things that encroached on my time flexibility. And we all run into these things, but the nuts and the bolts of it, again, that 6 to 10 hours that I've been spending on shiftless each week just took out a lot of wiggle room. So I need to find, and if things are going sideways, there may be no wiggle room, quite frankly. So I need to find a way to be more time efficient with shiftless is the short story there. And I don't know what that is yet. And from my point of view, quite frankly, the content on the podcast itself, from my end, my contributions, it's suffered as my bike riding has gone down as well. I have fewer riding bike stories to tell. And it's not just me, it's Brad and Caleb to get me involved in the discussions. Oh, what's next with Spinistry? What's going on with Spinistry? Shiftless was never meant to be a Spinistry promotion vehicle. It was a ride your bike promotion vehicle. And whenever we've been talking specifics around events and what's happening here and what's happening there and things like that, I've always felt a tinge of guilt throwing that into the shiftless conversation because that's not the intent. But I want to reinforce this is not the end of shiftless, but we will most assuredly be tweaking things going forward. I have no idea what that looks like yet. I sincerely hope we can find ways to include the chuckleheads as often as possible, but they have their priorities and their obligations as well. And I'm not going to ask them to turn their lives upside down for a recording session. Again, that's a me thing. That's not them. I'm running around everywhere on a very flexible but scattered schedule. A standing appointment to be in a certain place at a certain time every week. It just doesn't fit into my world currently. And I don't expect that to be changing anytime soon. I have to make my life where the priority is back to the bike. And those 6 to 10 hours that shiftless has required from me prevents that. Man, that sounds so negative. And I don't want it. It gets in the way of that. It interferes with that. So I have to figure out a way to better put all these pieces together. And maybe it is recording remote, like 98% of the podcasts that are done out there. Every time we've tried to do that on our end, it just turns into a giant clusterfuck. So I'm not excited about that prospect. Maybe it's me doing other episodes with other people on a little bit more scattered schedule and rolling Brad in whenever possible, Caleb whenever possible. I definitely want them involved as much as we possibly can. Again, this is a me thing. It's not a them thing. But I still want Shiftless to exist, and I still want to be a part of it. And I hope they're a part of it as well. I just know it's going to be something different somehow or another. Now we're sounding too negative, too down. That's not the intent. I'm trying to explain it. And I don't think this is a negative. I'm thinking out loud as much as anything at the moment. I know most of y'all aren't listening to hear Kevin talk. So I think the banter and the back and forth, that's the core of the show. I think the reality of it though is I think that's something maybe we can do a couple times a month as a group, as opposed to week in, week out, 9:30 Wednesday morning, Casa Verde. That's just not going to work. And I don't know what's going to work, sort of thing. And I want to help people ride their bikes. I want to share stories. I want other people to share stories. And I definitely want Brad and Caleb to share their stories because they're going to have a hell of a lot of stories to tell this year. And I'm looking forward to hearing them myself. And I'm sure you guys are as well. Didn't want this episode to be a downer. That's not what I'm going for here. It's not the end. I just don't know what it looks like going forward. And we'll take it from here. I can tell you this. Something I am going to do today. I'm going to take some advice from my dear friend, Mr. Bradford Green, and go ride my bike.